Hi, I'm Dave Atkinson, and welcome to Life on the Straight. For this great adventure series, I'll be reading from my 3-volume book, The Yonder Years, and this video will be providing a little more content than what is in the book. In this segment, we spend 2 weeks within Yellowstone National Park, our most favorite place during our entire 2-year adventure. Thank you for following Life on the Straight. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to this channel, which is free, and like and share as well. And now the Yonder Years. The drive to Yellowstone was spectacular. Mostly blue sky with a few puffy clouds here and there, and not much wind. There wasn't much in the way of freeway driving out of Bozeman as we turned south onto the 2-lane US 89 once we got to Livingston. The highway follows a shallow canyon until it terminates in the little town of Gardner, and from there we paid a fee to enter Yellowstone National Park. Right off the bat, we drove through the historic and imposing Roosevelt Arch. I pulled over to the side of the road and Amy got out to snap a few photos of Gypsy and our toad with the arch in the background. We continued south to Mammoth Hot Springs where the road forks. You can either remain on US 89 or head east on Grand Loop Road. We chose to remain on 89 and later pulled off when we reached a nice overview of the hot springs. If memory serves, we ate a little bit of lunch before pressing on. It was soon white-knuckle time again. Major road construction was going on over much of the stretch between Mammoth Hot Springs and Norris Canyon Road, which is where we were heading. They had the already narrow road coned off to be even tighter, and there was absolutely no shoulder. If your tires left the blacktop, you'd probably end up in a gully or a river. I was never as relieved to get to the end of a road construction project as I was that day in Yellowstone. Once we made it to Norris Canyon Road, it was smooth sailing to almost the Fishing Bridge RV park. Almost, because you must cross over the RV park's namesake first, and it was in sad, sad shape. Huge potholes everywhere, and in driving such a wide vehicle, there's no way to avoid them. The best I could do was just creep along the bridge and pray that I didn't blow out a tire. Pulling into the park, there was a large number of rigs ahead of us to check in. Staring us in the face was a large brown sign, "Be bear aware. Food storage required." Yikes! We had already seen several bison on the way in, and we were hoping to see some bears as well, provided that they didn't look at us like we were lunch. We soon found our campsite in the large RV park, and it was spacious with ample room for the Honda to the side of our rig. There were piles of snow below most of the trees, but our campsite was clear. Gypsy wasn't finished in showing us her flaws. On the way in, the front brakes would engage when I stepped on the pedal, but they wouldn't always disengage. I could tell it was the front brakes because of how the vibrations traveled through the steering wheel. I would pump them over and over until they finally disengaged. Combined with our other issues, it was looking more and more like buying a used motorhome had been a penny-wise but pound-foolish decision. Once we got all set up, we ventured outside to walk around and introduce ourselves to any neighboring travelers. We found a guy on his way to Washington State, and I was able to give him some advice on the route he should take if he wanted to avoid all the Seattle area traffic. Soon, a source of amusement would arrive that would leave us both laughing and thankful that we chose to travel with a motorhome. It was in the form of a truck pulling a large fifth-wheel trailer. I'm not exaggerating when I say we could have set up some chairs to watch the poor man try and back his trailer into his campsite. It was a one-way drive out in front of the campsites, and you need to drive past your designated site and then back up at an angle to get into it. With a fifth wheel, once it turns at an angle, the driver is basically blind to whatever is happening on the passenger side. I think that his wife was trying to assist, but it was probably a good 20 minutes of back and forth before he finally got that thing parked. For us, it was easy, as a motorhome doesn't bend. Using the mirrors, I could clearly see both sides of the coach and where it needed to be. Amy got out to help me park it near the back of our site and to ensure that our extended slide out wouldn't hit the power pedestal. Later that day, another Class C motorhome arrived on the other side of us. I could see that it was a rental. An older man, a younger woman, and two small children soon poured out, and before long the man gathered up his fishing gear and headed towards the lake. Later, the woman was trying to get a small charcoal grill started, and to my horror as I was watching, her and her kids picked it up and brought it inside of the coach and closed the door. I quickly went over and knocked on the door and told them that the grill gives off toxic fumes and that it needs to always be used outdoors. She was a school teacher, and yet she had no clue. Apparently the man was her dad, and he was in a grumpy mood, and the kids belonged to her. He had taken the keys, the ones that started the coach, with him, and she didn't know how to turn on the furnace, and they were just trying to stay warm. I figured out how to get their propane furnace running and left them to deal with their issues. Whew. That first day, we celebrated by driving a little way south to the Lake Yellowstone Hotel for a wonderful dinner, and a t-shirt, of course. When we returned, we swung into the Fishing Bridge General Store for a few clothing items and a few snacks. It is a nice little area with a nearby gas station and even a shop that provides car and RV repairs. The general store had a sit-down restaurant and confection area. The next 13 days created special memories that we hold to this day. Of all the places Amy and I would visit during our big adventure, Yellowstone was our favorite. If you've never been to Yellowstone, think of it like 4 big attractions all in the same place. First, there is the geothermal activity. Geysers, bubbling paint pots, hot springs, and amazingly clear and colorful thermal pools. Second, there is wildlife. Bears, moose, longhorn sheep, elk, beavers, snakes, raptors, and especially bison are scattered throughout the park. Third, the natural scenery is spectacular. Lake Yellowstone, the surrounding mountains, expansive valleys, numerous rivers, waterfalls, canyons, and rock formations. Mother Nature really put on a show in this part of the world. And fourth, the man-made structures were impressive. There's Lake Yellowstone Hotel, the massive Old Faithful Lodge built from logs, the more intimate Roosevelt and Mammoth Hot Springs lodges, the centrally located Canyon Lodge and cabins, and of course, mile upon mile of wooden boardwalks, paved and unpaved pathways, roads, and other facilities. I'm not going to provide you with a day-by-day journal of our travels throughout Yellowstone, but there are several interesting stories and events that are worth sharing. Let's begin with something outside of Yellowstone, and that would be the status of our vacant house back in Kingston. During our stay in Bozeman, we received an offer for our house. We didn't care for the terms, especially that the offer was contingent on the sale of their house. Plus the offer was below the listing price, and they wanted 3% towards closing costs. We made a counteroffer on June 1st that was declined. It was too new of a listing to consider a home sale contingency clause. I asked our agent to relay to the potential buyer's agent that we appreciated the offer, but we just wanted to wait a bit longer to see if a better offer develops. Inside Yellowstone, there were no cell towers, and turning on a TV or radio got you nothing but static. By chance, we were driving south along the western shore of Yellowstone Lake on June 3rd when we heard a little chime noise. Amy pulled out her cell phone, and AT&T was our carrier, and lo and behold, there was 1 bar of signal strength. We pulled off the road into a parking lot next to the lake and checked our voicemails. There was a message from our agent that the couple that made the offer was still interested in our house, but they couldn't afford to pay both mortgages until their house sold. The next day we were at the Canyon Lodge, which is close to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone major attraction. The area has several stores and restaurants, and our laptop picked up a pay-by-the-minute Wi-Fi hotspot. We entered our credit card information and got connected to the internet. I sent our agent an email saying that we'd be willing to accept a home sale contingency offer, but that we would want the full price and no 3% towards the closing costs. Plus, we were not going to pay for fixing the few defects that we had disclosed. 4 days later, we drove to that special spot next to Yellowstone Lake and checked our voicemail. There was one from our agent that the folks who made the offer agreed to our proposal. In addition to picking up 1 bar of cellular service, the upper right corner of the phone displayed the letter E, meaning that AT&T's Edge data network was available. But with a 1 bar connection, we would have to see if it was even usable. We turned on the phone's hotspot feature and connected our laptop, and when we launched our email app, new emails began to come across at a glacially slow speed. And there was the offer, all 17 pages of it, and just as we had proposed. We must have sat in that parking lot for hours downloading the offer and then electronically signing and uploading it. Since we didn't make any changes to it, our house sale was officially signed around to close in 45 days. What a relief! Another non-Yellowstone thing happened while we were inside the park. When we were downloading the backlog of emails looking for our house offer, an email arrived from one of our Coeur d'Alene Business Park tenants, and this is the same one whose space we parked behind earlier. Of our 3 tenants, he was and had always been a pain in the hindquarters. His business was supplying food, weapons, and other supplies to survivalists, and in addition to being a certified conspiracy theory kook, he was always complaining about what the other tenants were doing or not doing. The email wanted me to confront our newest tenant about people parking in quote-unquote his parking spaces, and I should note that there never was reserved parking spaces for tenants' customers, even if they were directly in front of their storefronts. Basically, this email was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back.